What a week it's been for race grifters. These are the people who latch onto any news topic and use it to batter white people for some imagined racism. They can then get attention and money from white people who are desperate to absolve themselves of this manufactured guilt. This week, the Women's World Cup team came under fire for being too white, the Edinburgh Fringe was accused of racism, and in the most tasteless race grifting since 1930s Germany, Dr. Shola mos-shogbamimu somehow managed to make the horrific Lucy Letby case about race. She said, "Lucy Letby exemplifies how ideology of whiteness keeps Britain in a chokehold. They believed her tears and denials, even though evidence said otherwise, for no other reason than she's white. A black or brown nurse would have been reported to the police immediately and sacked for suspicion." Really? If there is a systemic bias in the British public sector, evidence shows that this tilts away from white people. Ever since the Macpherson report introduced the spectre of institutional racism as the #1 menace 2 decades ago, the paramount aim of everyone in the public sector has been to look as non-racist as possible. What should be a noble aim, of course people shouldn't actually be racist, has had terrible consequences. The grooming gangs in Rotherham were predominantly Pakistani Muslim and the victims were predominantly white, but whistleblowers who came forward were demoted, sacked or sent on diversity training because people in the establishment were so afraid of being accused of racism. This allowed the perpetrators to continue unimpeded for decades, destroying young girls' lives in the most horrific way, and ironically stoking more racism than if they'd just dealt with the problem. And other parts of the public sector openly display anti-white bias. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan said, "There are too many white men on Transport for London," and his website also said that white people aren't real Londoners. The RAF were forced to apologise for discriminating against what the recruiter described as useless white men. Useless white men? If that discrimination had been against a different ethnicity, people would be in jail, which they'd probably like because jail is a diverse environment. And in May this year, Glasgow City Council posted a job advert explicitly aimed at those who identify as black, Asian or minority ethnic. We see time and time again that anti-white discrimination isn't just permitted, it's very fashionable. Look at how the Women's World Cup team is berated for being white.
The only thing I would say about this picture here, what jumps out of you is that this doesn't sort of represent diverse Britain. It's all these blonde, blue-eyed girls, and, you know, I wish them well, but I do think we need to ask ourselves questions about why is it that we've got, it has a lack of diversity.
They're playing sport at an elite level.
Yeah.
And they are from Britain. And they're women.
It doesn't make any difference. I think if the whole idea behind this is going to encourage more women to go and into the sport, you need some sort of representation there to say, whatever background you come from, you could get to this sort of level.
Because it's
Britain
important,
doesn't look like that.
Yeah,
But
and it's so important when you speak to these little girls that they see someone that they can relate to.
Exactly. It makes such a difference. That little girl might then end up playing football because she's seen someone who looks like her.
If the whole idea behind this is that we're going to encourage more women or more representation in sport, no, the whole idea behind this is to score goals and win the game. Also, there is representation. It's not an all-white squad. The presenter is so cucked and demoralised and afraid of being called racist that she has to agree with them. It's so important that little girls can see someone they relate to. Really? When I was a kid I wanted to be B.A. Baracus. I wasn't waiting for the A-team to hire a lanky Scottish guy. Also, there is representation on the women's team. It might not be as conspicuous as in the men's team, but a warning to all the people demanding representation based on demographic proportionality rather than merit. The UK is still about 85% white, and black men are overrepresented in football. So if football strictly enforces racial quotas instead of hiring on merit, there are going to be a lot of black people getting kicked out of football and replaced with white guys. And the royal family are berated for being terribly white.
There is a bit of me that we've gone from the rich diversity of the Abbey to a terribly white balcony.
Terribly white? The British royals are a pan-European melting pot of the most inbred Greeks and Germans. I wonder how future generations will look back at our weird era of self-flagellation. White Brits beating themselves up when, by any measure, Britain is one of the most welcoming and tolerant countries on the planet.
Do British people have culture?
English people do not.
have culture. They are uncultured. They've just stolen from the entire globe. They are essentially racist people because we just stole from the entire planet. Our national dish is chicken tikka masala. What the f is that about? We have about as much culture as a bit of pavement that's been painted over of horse shit. Oh my God.
But facts don't matter when there's money to be made by grifters such as Dr. Shola by filtering everything through the poisonous prism of critical race theory that says that all white people are inherently racist. You'd think she'd maybe take a day off when we're talking about the most abhorrent serial killer in contemporary history, but actually this is perfect for Dr. Shola. The more disgusted people are by her, the more outrage flows in her direction, the more she can hold that outrage up and say, look at this horrific racism directed at me. And she gets attention, highly paid speaking engagements, media appearances on Jeremy Vine and Good Morning Britain, book sales. These are tithes paid to the high priestess of racism to combat the ever-present sin of whiteness. It's not a new thing. In medieval times, holy men raised huge sums of money by selling indulgences, which purified souls of their sins, meaning less punishment in the afterlife for the customer. The church had a complex system to calculate exactly how much less torment or time in purgatory you'd get for purchasing an indulgence, sort of like a carbon offset scheme for morality, or a very early ESG rating system. And the money they made was astronomical. Selling indulgences paid for the construction of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Christian men were also encouraged to fight in the Crusades as an indulgence to offset the sins and suffering in the afterlife. Perhaps the social justice street warriors of Antifa fight under a similar sin offset scheme. We do the exact same thing now, but our society's original sin is whiteness, and the indulgences are purchased through diversity training by racial awareness coaches, donations to Black Lives Matter, and talks by Dr. Shola. It's a huge industry. According to The Economist, between May and December 2020, donations to Black Lives Matter related causes amounted to $10.6 billion. That's billion, not million. There's a lot of controversy around how much of this actually goes to helping people and how much goes to ensuring a luxurious life for the modern day televangelist running BLM. Patrisse Cullors, the founder of BLM, siphoned off millions of dollars to gift to her family and baby daddy and buy luxury properties. Grassroots BLM organisations and the families of victims of alleged police violence such as Breonna Taylor have complained that they haven't received any support from Patrisse. But real estate agents have coined it in, with Patrisse using BLM donations to buy properties including a $6 million, 7,400 square foot mansion in a posh part of Los Angeles, purchased tax-free because of BLM's non-profit status. And Patrisse Cullors' friends and family are laughing all the way to the bank. In just 1 year, BLM paid Patrisse's baby daddy $1 million for media and design work. Patrisse's brother received nearly $1 million through his company for private security work, despite him having no history in security. He's a graffiti artist, whatever that means. And Patrisse's mother was employed as a cleaner, while her friend Shalomya Bowers received over $2 million in consulting fees. Patrisse Cullors makes it rain on her friends and family. I respect the grift, to be honest. I'd be doing the same thing. But it doesn't matter that the money's spirited away to have fun with. The money's not to do good. The money's to absolve guilt. All the white girls who put up a black square on Instagram can feel better because they sent in $20 to BLM instead of spending it on lip gloss or whatever. And all the corporations who need to raise their ESG rating by a few points can call in Dr. Shola to shout at their staff and tell them all they're inherently racist. According to our agent's website, Dr. Shola commands fees of £5,000 to £10,000 per appearance. They handily remind any corporate bookers of key dates when they need to tick that box. There's Race Equality Week in February, the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in March, Black History Month in October. How ironic that Dr. Shola makes money from perpetuating racial animosity in the name of eliminating it. Speaking of grifting, you can support my grift by joining my Patreon. From as little as £3 a month, you can help me build a studio for live streaming and get access to Patreon-only content. And I promise that none of your money goes to my friends and family. I keep it all and spend it on stuff I want. There's a link below, and also please like and subscribe and share this video. Okay, thanks for watching. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye-bye.